There we are. I'm hoping that's okay with you all. And here we go. Right here. Okay, so let's begin with preparing the kitchen for Pesach, because I think that's the one that has the most work. The simplest thing to do is to have a dedicated Pesach kitchen. If you can do that, then it's really simple. You already got a couple of laughs at that. The simplest thing to do is to just put away your chametz stuff, or shy away from it as best you can. Have your Pesach stuff set up, and we're good to go. A Pesach kitchen doesn't have to be enormous, and the more dedicated Pesach things we have, the better it is, for two reasons. Firstly, if it's less bother, we're more likely to do it. And secondly, we haven't got to rely on doing a cashing process properly. It's just there and it's done and everything's fine. So that's ideal. And the basic principle, of course, is that our Pesach food should be chametz free. And that means not only the food itself, but also the things in which it's prepared. So I'm going to have a little zip through the sorts of preparations we can do, assuming that we have no dedicated Pesach facilities whatsoever. We'll find that most things can be kashed. Some things can't, but most things can. Okay, so when it comes to something like a hob, which is like a gas stove or electric stove, where you put the pots on top and then you heat them up from beneath. I'm using very simple terms because this is how I think about the kitchen. I find it a bit of a scary place. So you put things on top of this flat surface on top of an oven, and then you turn on the gas and the electricity, and it heats them from beneath. That's what I'm calling a hob or a stove top. So this can be kasher for Pesach unless it's ceramic. If it's ceramic, then you can't really kasher it. There is a special kind of covering called, I think, mica, which I think Esther could tell us about, which you can, the London-based in previous years at least, have been able to tell you where to get hold of it. You cut it out to the shape of your stove top, and you place it around the rings, and it covers everything else, and that way you can get away with using your stove on Pesach. If it's not a ceramic top, then there are things you can do. If it's a glass top, you get these completely flat glass topped stove tops, where in principle it can be kasher. We need to pour boiling water on it, and that might damage it. And if you're worried about damaging something by kashering it, you're not allowed to kasher it, because the worry is that it won't be kashered properly because you'll be too sparing. So if you got one of those, I don't recommend using on a Pesach, but again, you can have that. I think it's called mica cutout surfacing to put on top of it if need be. Contact the London based in if you need to source that. So assume it's a regular stovetop with, let's say, metal between the rings, then you can pour boiling water onto the surface between the burners from a kettle that's just boiled. It's important not to put the water from a kettle into something else, like a jug, and then pour it onto the oven. That's onto the stove top. That's not good enough. It has to be directly from the kettle onto the stove top. And there are those who have a counsel of perfection, which is also to take a hot stone that's been placed in a flame and place that around on the sort of dab it about on the stovetop immediately after pouring the boiling water onto it. Can be a rather destructive process, both to oneself and to the stovetop, so be careful. If you're going to do this thing with the stone, then make sure you're wearing oven gloves, because it does get extremely hot. And if you have, as is common nowadays, these gas burners where you press a button and it makes an electric spark go, and that then lights the gas, you might find that by pouring water into them, that'll make the sparking go by itself anyway. You can put rags around the burners to absorb the water and stop the water getting into the burners. As you can hear, the whole thing is a somewhat fraught process, but it can be done. Another way of dealing with this is to get a metal blech, a big metal sheet, and place it over all the burners. And then you can turn on, let's say, front right and back left, and then front left and back right. And that way, the blech, the metal sheet on top of the burners, will reflect the heat down and kasher the stovetop that way. It also, if you've got the grates, the stands that the pots stand on underneath that blech, that'll be a way of cashiering that as well. If you don't want to use the blech thing, the big metal sheet, you want to use the hot water process, then there's a separate process that's required for cashiering the grates themselves, which is that you pass them through a flame. So you can hold them with oven gloves, put them slowly through the flame that comes out the gas burner, and then they're cashered as well. If it's possible to get special stands for the pots for Pesach, that is better. And there we are. That's how we can kasher the stove top. So it is a difficult process. When it comes to ovens, again, it's desirable to have a dedicated Pesach oven. We've in the past used a little baby belling, which is not enormous, but good enough for just a week or so. One can get by with that. But hey, if you want to cash your oven, it can be done. The trick is to clean it with Mr. Muscle, some sort of, that's not a recommendation for that brand, it's just the brand that I'm familiar with. And you clean it out thoroughly inside, and then you turn it to the highest heat for a couple of hours, and that burns away the taste in the walls of the oven, so it makes them chametz free. When it comes to the baking trays, the trays in the oven on which you place things, they require a more rigorous process to be kashered. And if you want to just kasher them and use them as they are, then they need to be blowtorched, which, well, you need to have a blowtorch for that. And also it can be damaging for them. So if you don't have a blowtorch to hand or don't want to use it, then as an alternative, this isn't ideal, but it can be used if there's nothing else. You Mr. Muscle them as well. You have them in the oven when it's on its highest heat. And then in addition, you cover them with thick foil for the duration of Pesach. That way you don't have to blowtorch them. You can get away with it that way. But if you want to use them uncovered, then it's blowtorching or a special dedicated set of Pesach baking trays for your oven. Any questions on that thus far? It's all pretty brutal, I'm afraid. But
Rabbi Lister, sorry, it's Debbie. I'm not on video.
okay.
Just very quick. When you're saying baking trays, do you mean the racks?
Yes, I'm sorry, my
Okay,
English is
no, that's fine. I was just thinking, I'm sure baking trays you need to have Pesach ones, but the racks themselves.
Yeah, I mean, it's anything that goes in the oven on which food things are actually placed needs this more rigorous kashering.
Yeah, so
So
just cover them with foil. We're okay if we cover them.
So if you're gonna use the ones that you use all year round, then it's a 3-stage process. You clean them with Mr. Muscle, you put them in the oven for a couple of hours on the highest heat, and you coat them with foil.
So we've got a pyrolytic oven. I wouldn't leave them in with pyrolytic, but I just put them on a high heat before the pyrolytic.
Yes. If you leave the trays and shelves in a pyrolytic oven, then you'll damage them, and that's
so do that before the pyrolytic thing, and then the pyrolytic, take them out and do pyrolytic, I guess, because then it's pressured the oven. Then it's.
I suppose so. Yeah, I don't think I don't think the order really matters that much, to be honest.
Yeah. Okay. And then just make sure they're covered.
Sure. Yes. Yes.
Well.
Yeah, they should be covered as well. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Some of this is a bit belt and braces, but as Pesach is such the rules are so rigorous about chametz, we are going to the nth degree on this. Yeah.
Well, hi there, it's Pamela here. I was just wondering a question on the top of the stove top. I know you spoke about, can you just heat the burners so that you're heating it and then cover the metal areas around the burners with silver foil, with a thick silver foil, so that you're not having to pour water on the hot top of the, do you know what I mean? Because you're kashering.
Yes, I understand. If you can rely on the foil not to tear during the whole of Pesach, I suppose you can get away with that. My experience of foil covers on Pesach hasn't been happy. You see my grey
hairs. How thick and how how many layers? Like we tend to put 2 or 3 layers. And
okay, if you're sure that nothing will get through it, then that's fine. Again, when it comes to cashing surfaces on Pesach, Rachel cleverly got these made-to-measure wooden surfaces from MFI a few years back, and that they are about 1 centimeter thick, and they're wooden with a plastic coating on top, and we just put them on our work surfaces, and that's it. It's so much simpler than the cashing, because there's absolutely no way how much they're going to get through them. So there are people who again do the belt and braces of boiling water over the surfaces and covering them. And if the covering is going to be possibly vulnerable to tearing or breaking, then good luck to you. But if you've got a really thick, solid surface, then strictly speaking, the surface. Sorry, if you've got a really thick, solid cover that you put on the surfaces for Pesach, then strictly speaking, you don't need to kasher the surface beneath it as well. One or the other should be enough. Another word on kashering surfaces.
Rabbi Lister, can I just ask a question about the ovens and how long are we not allowed to use it? Or can we just use it straight away once we've kashered it?
That's it. Yeah, once you kashed it, you kashed it.
Okay, so there's no like waiting 24 hours or...
No.
Okay.
No. There are some things where you do need to wait 24 hours, but not with kashering oven like that.
Okay, thank you.
Now, when it comes to kashering work surfaces, let's say you're not going to cover them, you just want to use them as they are. It gets a bit difficult because it depends what the surface is made out of. If it's made out of metal, it can easily be kashered. You make sure it's thoroughly clean and you pour boiling water on it. Ideally, first of all, second. Yeah, so you get you pour boiling water onto a metal surface, and there are those who say also you should get this hot stone and put it on there as well, and the boiling water kashes the surface, and then you're good to use it. The boiling water again has to come directly from a kettle rather than being put from a kettle into a jug and then onto the surface.
Rabbi Lister,
yeah,
in Israel we have Caesar stone work surfaces, which I was told do not need to be covered because they're not absorbent.
Right.
Am I right?
It's a hard one. What I always say to people when it comes to the nature of services is check with the basting, because the manufacturing methods change all the time, and this can entail different halachas to do with them. So all I say is if it's a simple metal or wooden top,
no, it's not metal. It's like the Caesar stone. It's like marble.
I understand, but the thing is, when it comes to stone, there are some stones they're a sort of amalgam of let's say marble and some sort of clay, and that can be harder to kasher. So and these things change all the time. So unless you're absolutely certain,
well, that's what they're showing here.
Stone.
The other thing is, can you use steam and not from a kettle?
No. Steam is good for cleaning, but it's not good for kashering, as far as I'm aware.
Okay.
Okay. So if you want to make sure that something has no solid stuff on it and the steam will dislodge it, then good luck to you, because things need to be cleaned before they're kashered. But I wouldn't use it at the actual kashering process. It's meant to be boiling water.
Okay.
Directly from the heat source. Okay. Now, when it comes to cutlery, I'm going to talk about cutlery, metal pots and pans and cutlery, which are just metal. If there's a china element to it, or a clay element, or bone, then there could be different halachas to do with it. I'll come on to plastic in a minute, because technically plastic can be kashered, but there's a technicality to that which I'll come to shortly. If you've got something like cutlery or metal, dishes that you want to kasher for Pesach, you can kasher them in boiling water. And the trick is to leave them for 24 hours since they were last used with hot stuff, and then you make sure they're clean, and then you heat up a pot of a Pesach pot of water on the stove. When it's boiling hot, you put the cutlery or the metal plates, whatever it is, into the pot, and that way it becomes kosher. It's important to bear in mind that when you put the things into the water, they will probably cool it off. And what we need to do is have the water boiling around the thing that we're immersing for kashering. So the trick is to leave the things in the water once you put them in, so that the water has a few seconds to regain its furious bubbling temperature. And at that point, the cutlery is considered kashered. If you have something that's too big to immerse in something, then you leave it for 24 hours, and then you fill it with water and you bring it to the boil, and that is its kashering process. So let's say you've got a big pot that you want to use for Pesach and it's metal. So again, leave it 24 hours since it's last used, make sure it's clean, fill it with water, bring it to the boil, and Bob's your uncle. You can also do that with a metal or plastic Shabbos kettle. Again, you clean out the tap as best you can. If you can dismantle the tap, so much the better. And then you fill it to the very top, or fill it as high as you safely can, bring it to the boil, and there you go. There are some who are particular also to get a hot stone and pour it, drop it into the boiling Shabbos kettle, so that the water flows over the rim and catches the very rim itself. This means you have boiling water cascading down the edges of your Shabbos kettle. Not for the faint-hearted, that one. I'm not saying you should necessarily do it. If you want to do it, please be very careful, and that way we'll not have any problems. And when it comes to cutlery with, let's say, plastic handles, there's a side issue here, which is that we're not supposed to kasher things if we're worried about damaging them, as I mentioned before with the shelves. So if you've got something which you're worried about putting in boiling water, like let's say a spoon with a plastic handle, and you're afraid if you put it in a pot of boiling water, it'll distort the plastic, then you're not allowed to cash it again, because you might not do it properly. So in such a situation, we don't recommend that you put it in boiling water. For plastic, and also if there's glass that you must use on Pesach, which is unusual nowadays because glass is pretty cheap, but if there's glass that you must use for Pesach, then you should boil it to as hard as you can without fear of damaging it. And then in addition, there's another cold kashing process which you can do, which is somewhat laborious, but again, if you really need to do this, here's what you do. You put the thing in cold water, let's say a bowl of cold water, leave it for 24 hours, change the water, leave it for a second 24 hours, change the water and leave it for a third 24 hours, and then it's koshered. So you can do that for things that should in principle be kashered in hot. But if you're afraid to cash them in hot water, then you heat them as much as you can, then you do that process with the putting in the water 3 times. Back in the day, this was apparently quite common, that people, when glassware was much more expensive, and it was common that the bath in the house would be out of bounds in the run up to Pesach, because it'd be full of glasses that people would be getting ready for Pesach. Nowadays, I maintain that glassware is so cheap that it shouldn't be necessary to rely on that. But hey, if that's your situation, then good luck to you. When it comes to earthenware, like crockery, like plates and cups, these generally speaking cannot be kashered. And the same applies for Ashkenazim to glass and Pyrex. They can't be kasher for Pesach. Sfaradim have a different view of glass and Pyrex, but for Ashkenazim, our view is that we cannot kasher them for Pesach. If you're desperate to use it and there's no other choice and you absolutely must, then there are different ways to approach that. One is that if you've not used the thing for a year, there is a view that anything left for a year reverts to Parav and kosher for Pesach. So let's say it's an antique china set that you've inherited from your great-grandparents or whatever, and it's not been used for decades, that is kosher for Pesach ipso facto, according to one opinion. So if you need to rely on that, you're welcome. There is another view, which I heard from Diane Armstrong himself, which is that if you have something earthenware that is glazed, as most of our earthenware is, and you kasher it by putting it in boiling water 3 times, there is a view that kashers it. Again, we don't like to rely on that, but if you're desperate to do that and it's just a thin coating, and it's earthenware coated in glass, then there is a view you can do that, but it's not recommended unless you absolutely have to. Any questions on any of that thus far? Okay. I got into trouble many, many years ago in the shul for talking about removing the fan from a fan oven to cash on Pesach. I subsequently checked this with Dan Gell, and he said that you can get away without it. So when it comes to that, just for the record, what he said to me was that if you spray some sort of cleaning material into the fan, we can let it go with that. So let the record show that. Okay, any other questions on kashering thus far?
Rabbi Lister, I wanted to ask a question. Is there a time amount you need to be pouring, for example, boiled water, or you need to be boiling utensils for 1 minute or 10 seconds, or
No,
doesn't? Or
no, it happens instantaneously. As soon as you've got this boiling process going on around the thing, it's done. And the same thing with pouring water onto, let's say, a metal surface. As soon as the boiling water hits the surface, it's kashered. That's it. And you'll find, I mean, a boiling kettle is not that big, so you'll find that you haven't got that long before all the water's gone. So if you're pouring, let's say, 5 seconds on each spot, you'll be there for a long time. So just as long as it hits it, it's fine. And you sort of wiggle it about and take it down, and there you go. Okay. I'll just see if there's anything else I've got to deal with. Okay, so any other? Let me deal with a few other just loose ends on the kashering thing. Just a second. Here we go. This is fun. Yeah, so just for the avoidance of doubt, when it comes to kashering your sink, this would also be 24 hours after the last use with something hot. Yeah, there's a few more things that I want to cover here in terms of kashering. If you've got a microwave, there's a debate about whether you can kasher a microwave on Pesach. Rabbi Chaim Pinchas Scheinberg told me personally that we don't kasher microwaves for Pesach, but there are those who take a different view, and I like to quote lenient views when I can. So if you want to use your microwave for Pesach, the way to do it is to clean it all over, to replace the glass plate with a special Pesach one, or double wrap the glass plate in cling film, or something that's microwave safe. Get a cup that's not been used for hot things for 24 hours, put water into the cup, and heat that cup of water in the microwave for as long as it's safe to do so. I mind it for about 10 minutes once with a big cup. And that way, there is a view you can kasher your microwave Pesach with that process.
Can I just offer for the microwave ovens, which are sort of both in one?
Yeah.
Do you apply the stringencies of both?
Yes, you do. Definitely. Yeah, because this thing about the microwave that I just mentioned is a leniency, which relies to a degree on the fact that a microwave oven might be a cliche and not really properly making things hot. Because the thinking is that perhaps in halacha, it's not that the microwave makes things hot, it's that the microwave causes the food within it to make the whole oven hot. So in that case, it might not count as having all the stringencies of an oven, a regular oven. But like I say, it's debatable, and hey, we can talk about that. Hot plates can be kashered. You clean them all over. You turn it on to its highest heat for an hour, and you cover it with foil. Fridges and freezers should be cleaned and lined with paper, plastic, or foil. Rachel famously said a few years ago, in the beginning of COVID, that you can use a toothpaste and toothbrush to clean a fridge and freezer because it's slightly abrasive and works very well. So I'll mention that in her name. Dishwashers can be kasher for Pesach. You clean out the sump. You make sure that the coating on the racks is intact. You make sure that there's no ceramic or any clay earthenware interiors. And then you leave it for 24 hours since the last use. You put it on the highest setting with plenty of salt and soap in there, but nothing else in it. You run it through a cycle, and it can be viewed as kosher for Pesach.
Rabbi Lister, it's Nicole Gordon here.
Hello.
Hello, how are you? Is that with the dishwasher? I always thought that you would have to buy new racks. I've never used my dishwasher, so it's interesting to hear that.
That's what my cashmere book says, and it's got plenty of illustrious recommendations for it.
Okay.
There are different views. I mean, it might depend on what the racks are made out of. Because I know if the racks are ceramic, then that's a big problem.
Okay, and also you mentioned hot plates.
Yes.
We've got, as well as the hot plate, I've started using now like a warming trolley.
Right.
So I think last year what I did, and I hope it was right, I literally just cleaned it all and then covered it all with foil inside. So
in addition, it's recommended that once you cleaned it, you bring it to its highest heat for a few minutes.
Okay.
So you clean it, you heat it up, and then you cover it with foil, and then you're fine to use it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, pleasure. Okay, I think I'm pretty much done. Yeah, when it comes to oven extractor hoods, there are those who are particular to cover the hood with foil, lest the steam from the oven, which has conveyed chometz to it in the year, bring chometz down from it on Pesach. But there is a view that this is not required, because by the time the steam gets up there, it's probably not hot enough to have this effect of bringing the chometz taste down from it into the food that you're cooking. There are those who are particular, it is good to clean it, especially if you can use it on Pesach. There are those in particular, in addition, to cover it with silver foil. If you're going to do that, don't use it on Pesach, just cover it with silver foil and then leave it. But as I say, the basic requirement is that it should be cleaned. And if you do that, then it's absolutely fine. Anything else I should talk about? Yeah. When you're cashing your sink, as well as pouring water over the part where the water flows from the tap, you should also pour the boiling water on the taps itself and the spout that the water comes out of.
Rabbi Lister?
Yeah.
Sorry, about the sink. So after you've cleaned the sink, and then you have to wait, what, 24 hours, and then you can't use the sink at all?
Okay, so you should wait for 24 hours after the sink was last used for very hot things. Then pour boiling water on it from the kettle, and there are some in additional particular to put the hot stone all over it. As part
But in that 24 hours, this is what's always the difficulty, is that then you can't wash your hands even if you've had chometz on it or anything.
So if it's cold, it's fine. It's only hot things that are a problem. So if you want to use it for cold in the meantime, it makes no difference.
Even if there's chometz?
Yes. Even if you pour beer down it, like if it's cold beer, I mean, I wouldn't. You had to have a strong nose to do this. Halachically, it won't make a difference because it's when you get hot things, a hot thing in the sink that embeds its taste in the wall, that's going to cause problems if there's 24 hours. If there's less than 24 hours before you do the cashing process with the boiling water.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Now I want to move on now briefly to the search for chometz. Actually, you know what? I want to do medication and cosmetics because I think those are a bit less well known. And I'm mindful of the time. I haven't got that long. So let me just deal with cosmetics and medication on Pesach because I think those are also very important. When it comes to cosmetics, there is debate at the moment about the kind of cosmetics that one can use. So if it's something that is utterly inedible and has no foodstuffs in its preparation, then it's fine. So things like nail polish, nail varnish removers, hairsprays, shampoos, shower gels, baby wipes, and soaps. They can all be used because you can't eat it. I wouldn't try eating them, but if you ever get them in your mouth, it's really disgusting. It's best to avoid products which mention ingredients derived from barley, oats, wheat, rye, and spelt. The many Botei Din, many kashrus authorities do not allow cosmetics that are made with denatured alcohol. However, the London Based Din permits denatured alcohol products and only forbids alcohol-based products. So, for example, if you got perfume or aftershave or deodorant, which has an alcohol base to it, that's a problem unless it's denatured alcohol, in which case the London Basin permits it. We are more particular with products that come in contact with the mouth, such as toothpaste, mouthwash, and lipstick. And even though it's not actually going in the mouth, we're more particular about these things. So we should be extra careful to ensure that there's no chametz derivatives in, let's say, lipstick, and also you can get kosher Pesach toothpaste and mouthwash. I got a question just the other day from somebody who needs a particular kind of toothpaste for a particular dental condition, and that had to be used on Pesach. And they asked me what to do. So I referred them to the London Basin because they often have alternatives which are kosher Pesach for these particular products. Dental floss can be used on Pesach, but if it's got, let's say, a mint coating to make it taste nice, that should be avoided on Pesach. When it comes to medication, so the first thing obviously is if there's, God forbid, there's a threat to life, then while that doesn't necessarily permit everything altogether, if we need to have something because of threat to life, then we must have it. If we can avert a threat to life in a Pesach-friendly way, we should do so. If we can't, then we have this procedure or this medication, whatever it may be. Generally speaking, if somebody needs to have medication on Pesach and it's one of these chalky white or plasticky capsules or pills, they're okay. The likelihood of them having chametz in them is vanishingly small, and also it's not considered a proper form of eating. If it's flavored or chewable, then that's often a problem because the coating is often chametz in its ingredients. So for such medications, you should seek alternatives before Pesach. If that's not possible and it's necessary to have on Pesach, so for example, I had somebody who asked me a few years ago, they had a stomach condition, which meant that they had to have a particular medication on Pesach, otherwise they'll be, really very ill. It wasn't life-threatening, but it would be extremely unpleasant. And there wasn't a non-flavored, non-chametz alternative for them for this medical requirement. So I found out that in such a situation, what you should do is get a little tiny bit of paper, like a tissue paper, wrap the pin in that, then take it that way, because that's an unusual way of consuming the medication, and it's not called a normal way of eating. And that way you get around the fact that you're consuming chametz on Pesach. The things to watch out for are sorbitol and glucose and any sort of flavoring. Those are things to watch out for. But again, if you're not sure, and if God forbid there's a threat to life or even a possible threat to life, take the medication and then give me a call afterwards. And I'll probably say it's not so terrible. Please do not take any chances with your health. We're not allowed to be particular and take a strict line on our health if we risk our health in the process. Any more questions on the medications and the cosmetics? No, okay with that. Okay, totally good. I'm not sure what else you want me to cover. So, are there any questions on anything to do with Pesach while we're here?
Hello, hi. I'm Miriam. I just wanted to ask you regarding cleaning products. Should I look for cleaning products that are kosher for Pesach too? Do they exist or is not?
Right. So there are those who are particular to get cleaning products that are kosher for Pesach, and it is commonplace to be particular for things like washing up liquid. You can get kosher for Pesach washing up liquid, even though it's not edible. I mean, I've tried it. It's not fun to eat it. So we try to avoid it. So if you want to be particular to get all your cleaning products kosher for Pesach, like Brillo pads and bleach and so on, may God bless you for that. As I say, the common stricture with cleaning products is with things that we use on our dishes, things like washing up liquid. I've not heard of it for dishwasher tablets. I don't know if there are such a thing as Kosher Pesach dishwasher tablets, but I know there's Kosher Pesach washing up liquid. There's not. Okay, thank you, Barbara, for that. But I know washing up liquid can be bought in a Kosher Pesach form, and we listers do have Kosher Pesach washing up liquid because we can, and it's a proper thing to do.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions on anything else?
Yeah, can I just ask, what's your view on like other kashrut authorities? Because SKA have obviously come out with a long list, some of which is kitniot, so not applicable, but they've also, yeah.
Right. This is a fun question. Thank you. First of all, I'll just have to point out one particular thing. And it's not really to do with Pesach at all, but it's something which some people don't quite follow. SKA have issued a hechsher for bread, and there's also a hechsher for, I think, I'm not sure which one it is, for the SKA have given a hechsher for Kingsmill. There's also a hechsher, I forget which one, for Hovis. Now, the kashrus authorities are entirely right and proper to do this, and I have absolutely no problem with that. And God forbid, I'm not calling them to task for that. However, when we are living in a place where there's a Jewish bakery where Jews bake the bread, we're not to use bread that is baked by non-Jews. So when we're in Edgware, there's at least 3 kosher bakeries that I can think of off the top of my head in Edgware. It's not the right thing to buy Kingsmill or Hovis bread, even if it has the SKA hechsher on it, because that hechsher is only intended, as far as I'm aware, for areas where there's not Jewish baked bread available. So when I'm on holiday in Plymouth, there's no Jewish bakers in Plymouth, and there, we will happily buy the Kingsmill bread. My kids love it. But when we're in Edgware, we're particular only to have bread that's baked by Jews. That's just a side point. When it comes to accessing the kashrus of other kashrus authorities, there can be a bit of an issue with this, because they may be following, especially the Sephardi one, they may be following Sephardi halacha that has leniencies that the Ashkenazim don't approve of. And particularly, you mentioned kitniot already. There may be other things that are acceptable leniencies for the Sephardi community, which aren't for the Ashkenazi community. So you may in fact be relying on a leniency that the Ashkenazim don't approve of. So that's something to be mindful of. However, when it comes to things like London based in versus Cadasia or whatever, I don't rightly know. There are those who say that London based in is on the lenient side of kashrus in order to make it less costly, in order to make kashrus more accessible to other people. But on the other hand, I've also heard that no, on the contrary, the London based in regulates its products so carefully and so well that in fact it's better to use them. So I can't really give you much of a view on this, except that, when it comes to Sephardi leniencies, be wary, because they might not be our own. I don't know who you are. I'm assuming you're Ashkenazi.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's one to watch out for. And look, if you're not sure, you could always call them up and say, is this or that product also acceptable for Ashkenazim in your view? Or call the London based in and say, you've seen this on the SKA list, why is it on yours? Yeah. If you follow London based in, you're safe halachically. If you go with SKA, again, it's in no way, God forbid, casting a slur on their probity or their learning. I'd never do such a thing. Just that they may be using halachis that the Ashkenazim aren't entitled to follow.
Rabbi Lister, a quick one on cooking oil.
Yeah.
In Israel, Ashkenazi communities use canola, whereas the based in London say, sorry, you've got to have sunflower oil, which is, they can't both be right, surely.
You're right too. This is an old question. When it comes to kitnios and what counts as such, it's very difficult to define it, and that there are different approaches to categorizing and defining what counts as kitnios and what doesn't. I don't know what more I can say really, except to say that if we're in London, when in Rome does the Romans do. When in
I understand.
we follow London based.
It's much easier in London, I can assure you, because the supermarkets, A, don't get the stuff in till very late, B, don't separate it out, and it's a nightmare. It's much more difficult to buy. Yes, you can get a lot of things, but it's not all for us. It's all mixed up, and it's not even covered over until Pesach itself.
Right.
It's not done. I'm used to years ago shopping in a completely kosher Pesach little shop where everything is taken out.
Yeah.
But it doesn't exist here. You're buying bread and putting it in the same conveyor belt as your matzah.
Yeah. What can I say? It is what it is. I mean, it was a beautiful place to be. If I could live there,
Very much more difficult.
Well, I think personally, I think it's worth it to live in Israel. But there we are.
You can look forward to your second night.
We absolutely will. That's fun. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Is there anything else that I've not covered that people want to cover? I don't want to.
Rabbi, it's Jeremy.
Hello.
Hi. Could you cover anything to do with pets? In our case, particularly tropical fish, cats, and guinea pigs, but I'm sure there are others out there.
Right. Pets are a bit of a nightmare on Pesach. Can you do they need chametz food?
In our case, we believe we can work around what we have for our animals, but other people's mileage may vary.
Right. So the simplest thing to do is to have kosher Pesach pet food. In other words, for example, if you give them meat or I don't know, a fish meal or whatever it is, that's got no chametz ingredients in, then you're fine. And even of course, it's not meant for human consumption. This stuff, it is to the Pom Tam on Pesach.
Okay, there is also a KLBD approved list of pet foods which cover basic things like cats and dogs.
I didn't know that. Okay.
On the website.
Well, that's fantastic. So I refer you to that. I mean, when it comes to fish, it's a bit harder because I know fish flakes, I think, have all sorts of things in them, which can be chametzy. You can have these for fish. You can have blocks of fish food, which are for holidays. So maybe if that's kosher to Pesach, and you put it in there for the week, it'll do. But it's risky because fish rely on their water being clear, and these blocks have a tendency to cloud the water, and that can kill the fish. So I mean, there are all sorts of difficult scenarios about selling your pets and selling the food and having laundry look after them for the week of Pesach. It gets complicated. If anybody has an animal that needs chametz food, speak to me and I'll look into it. I can't do that off the top of my head. But I thank you for bringing up that point about the KLBD list. It's very helpful.
Thank you.
Yeah. Anything else that people want to talk about?
We do have dogs and chickens, so that we need to feed them with kidneyot. Would that be okay?
So that's an interesting question. There's no prohibition to own kidneyot on Pesach. So this can be a problem with little children where they have baby formula and they need it and it's kidneyot based. So that's okay on Pesach. It just has to be kept stringently separate from the stuff that you have. So if you have dedicated bowls and so on and sinks or whatever it is for preparing the food for the animals and the birds, and you keep that well away from your own things, that's fine. Yeah, it's not a problem.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else?
Did you say you wanted to mention search for chametz?
I mean, I could do. Should we zip through that briefly? It's I'll go through. I know, just for the fun of it. So the search for chametz, in principle, is on the night before Pesach. Twas the night before Pesach. We do our chametz search, and you say the bracha. You search around with a candle flame, and then you isolate the chametz you're going to have for the morning. You keep a bit to burn for the following morning before the relevant time. And then you do the appropriate bittul formula. They say that the words which are do bittul for the chametz that you've not yet seen. And then in the morning, you burn a bit of chametz, and then you say the bittul for everything that you are. And that bittul annuls the chametz legally, and also you disown it. The main tricksy one for Pesach and searching for chametz is when people are going away for Pesach. And this gets a bit delicate because within 30 days, if you leave your home within 30 days of Pesach, you're meant to do a search of your home before you leave. But that search is done without a bracha. So that if you come back home during Pesach, your home is chametz free. Now, and also you're not only chametz over Pesach. The issue is that if you're also doing a sale of chametz, then what's the point of doing a search in your home? Because anything you find is going to be sold anyway to the non-Jew. So the way we deal with this is that Dan Binstock recommends that you exclude a small part of your home from the sale. And then this section is searched for real before you leave to go wherever it is you're going on Pesach. So for example, you leave the front porch out of the sale, you check that before you leave on holiday, the night before you leave with your candle. And then in the night before Pesach, wherever you are on holiday, you do the search for real there. So that's the thing about the search for Pesach. The question normally comes up is about when people are away for Pesach. If somebody's in hospital over Pesach, then they can still do a search on their, their night table and around their bed, because that's a little bit closer to their kind of area. Obviously, you don't have to insist that your non-Jewish neighbors don't have chametz over Pesach. You'll not be the most popular person on the ward if you start shouting at them for having their breakfast. They're allowed to do that. They're not Jewish.
Rabbi Lister,
yeah.
Can you tell us what happens if on Pesach one of the kids finds a cracker that was hidden away somewhere you hadn't found or something? Do you know what I mean?
Right,
like
right.
one of the toys. What should we do with that little piece of chametz?
So this happened to me many years ago when, gosh, I think I was still in school, and in my zeal, I put out 10 pieces of chametz for the search. Somebody have a practice to put out 10 pieces of chametz, and I only found 9. And I looked and looked for that 10th, I couldn't find it anywhere. It was very frustrating. But I thought, well, I must, maybe I'll put that 9. On Pesach night, I found that 10th piece of bread under my pillow in my bed. It was not my finest hour. My parents weren't best pleased. They put a brave face on it. So if you find it on Shabbos or Yom Tov, you have to put a bowl over it until Chol HaMoed or until the end of Yom Tov. If you find it, and then when Chol HaMoed or the end of Yom Tov comes, if you've done a sale, you can put it away with the other stuff that's sold to Pesach. If you've not done a sale, then you just burn it. You'll have done the bittul anyway, the discerning it, so it's not so terrible to have it in your possession on Pesach. If you find it in the week, let's say Chol HaMoed, then you just again put it away or destroy it. If it's worth a significant amount of money, then probably best, and you've done a sale, then best to put it away, because it's Andrea's chametz. You can't just go around burning her stuff. It's stealing. Is that okay?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, lovely. All right.
In Israel, you just sign a piece of paper in the shul, put your name and address and the phone number on. That's it. You don't have a kinyan like I used to do with you. You don't value it. You don't tell you where it is. You just sign a piece of paper.
Yeah,
I assume the area buys it and sells it to somebody. I'm not sure who.
I've introduced this here as well. That instead of doing a kinyan with me, you can now just fill out a form that you get in the poster online.
Okay, no, you don't even fill it. All you do is put this thing, you leave it in the shul, you put your name and address and phone number, and that's it.
Yeah, you can get away with that. Yeah, I mean,
okay,
I can raise you on that. Many years ago, when we were in Reading, I was on my way from Reading to London to see the sale, my first sale of chametz done on Erev Pesach. And Rachel got a call in Reading from somebody who wanted to sell their chametz. And she paged me, because I didn't have a mobile phone before those days, and to call her, and I didn't know what to do. So I called her from a phone box, and I was told that if she paged to me the value of this person's chametz, that will constitute her appointing me on his behalf to sell his chametz for him. So when the number 400 came through on my pager, that was his appointing me to sell his chametz.
Okay.
So there we are. That works as well. Okay, any other questions on our Pesach preps? Looks like we're done. Okay, thank you very much, everybody. If you want to message me privately between now and Pesach, of course, you're very welcome with individual questions. I'm always happy to help as best I can. And I wish you a lovely Pesach. Thank you all for coming. It's been an absolute joy to see you and to talk in Torah with you all. I wish you all a very happy Pesach and gesund, we've got good health for the summer and beyond.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Okay. Good night all. Thank you.
Hi.
Good night. Thank you, Rabbi.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Eva.